everyone. Thanks so much for joining me for this week's episode of When I Grow Up. On today's episode, it's my pleasure to welcome my new friend, Eileen Sonu. Hi, Eileen. How are you?
Hi, Blair. I'm good. I'm pumped to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited that you're here. You guys, so this conversation today, I was just telling Eileen, I feel like could go a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because Eileen is here. She's a lot of things, Eileen's a lot of things. But
Mm-hmm.
today, specifically, we're here to talk about being a stay-at-home mom, which, if you're a frequent listener, you know that this is, my heartbeat. So Eileen and I connected recently, and we were just talking about this, and I feel like you had a lot of really insightful things to say about being a stay-at-home mom. So I'm really glad you're here. So thank you for your time today, Eileen.
Thank you. I'm honored that we had that brief interaction at my husband, your husband's softball game. And I'm so honored that you felt like you could have a safe conversation with me.
Yes, absolutely. Just like a quick plug. So Eileen's husband actually was on the podcast too, which is one of my favorite episodes. So you can go talk. Excuse me, I'm having trouble talking because I'm so excited about this conversation. But Dr. Stan Sonu is Eileen's husband. But it's a great episode. Go check it out. But I know that even in that episode, Dr. Stan was like, Eileen is my better half. And
oh, he said that? I didn't listen to it.
Yes. And then even at the end, when we were all done recording, he probably doesn't even remember. He was like, you should really have my wife on. I think she would have a lot of great things to say. And I'm like, yes. Okay. So I felt like meeting you at the softball game really opened up a door for me. So, yeah, I don't even know where to start.
I don't know either. And, your intro saying this could go so many different ways. I think, yeah, just bear with us, listeners, yes. Because I have thoughts about this all the time, what it means, how the world is to women and mothers, and it just goes a whole bunch of different ways. And I want to try to be as cohesive as possible, but also as honest as possible. Yeah. And not afraid, yes, either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are, yes, not being afraid to say what you feel like needs to be said, the truth, right. Like you said. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's start with this. How many kids do you have?
I have 2 kids. I have a 7-year-old, Elliott, who is in first grade. And I have a 2.5-year-old, Sophie, who she's not in school. She'll be starting a very part-time preschool in September.
Awesome.
So I've been home with, so Elliott is 7, so I've been a stay-at-home mom for 7 years now. Mm-hmm. And part of that was in Chicago. And the reason why, I'll just tell you the whole backstory, I guess.
Yes.
The reason why I started staying at home was, I didn't have this, I had never considered this as something that would be part of me. When I was younger, it wasn't something, the whole title of your podcast is When I Grow Up.
Right.
It wasn't when I grow up, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. It wasn't that I had any bad thoughts about it at all. It was just that I had no thoughts about it because, quite frankly, my own relationship with my mother wasn't, I feel like you're your quintessential, Asian daughter, Asian mother relationship. And I wouldn't say that there was much nurturing. She loved me, but there wasn't this nurturing aspect to it. And it wasn't, so I didn't think oh yes, motherhood, this is what I want. This is what I long for. So there was just no thoughts about it. And then on top of that, being drilled into us that we need to study hard, work hard, and then compounded with well, if you're a female, if you're a woman, just marry a doctor, and like, you know, my mom was like, just stay at home, and I was like, no, I will not stay at home. And look at me now, like, look at me now. I'm married to a doctor and I'm staying at home. So that, I mean, that in itself was like a bit of a, that was something that I had worked through also with Stan. And he knew that from the get-go. But yeah, so it wasn't something that I had considered, had not considered when I was younger. But after I got pregnant with Elliott, we were living in Chicago, and Chicago is like a much cleaner, much, I guess, I wouldn't say cheaper, but it's not, you know, it's like a cleaner, cheaper version of New York.
Okay.
Childcare was like outrageous. I was working at the time as a, what was I doing? I was a administrative assistant for a nonprofit, for a Christian nonprofit in Chicago. It was like equivalent to a Boys and Girls Club in Chicago. But I was working there, and my salary was, it wasn't even like, you know, enough to cover like half of daycare.
Wow.
But I loved the job. Like, it was an absolutely like formative and like life-changing time in my life. But not sustainable for like, you know, and the whole premise of like the nonprofit that I was at was, it was like providing mentorship to, for fatherless or like people without, children without mothers or fathers like in their home, or like a consistent caretaker in their home.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it was very, you know, it was kind of like my boss, the like the president of the nonprofit, he was kind of like, oh yeah, this doesn't make sense for you to not be at home with your kid. So I wouldn't say I was let go, but it was a very mutual decision to like when Elliott was when I was pregnant with Elliott, that at the end of my due date that I would be like leaving, basically.
I see.
And Stan at that point, he was on a resident salary, which is very, very little. I don't know if people know much about like the order of like how doctors become doctors, basically. But he was making very little at that time. But we had just decided that I would be home, and then we would live off of his salary. And in the beginning, you know, it was like the first year with both my kids, I went through a very, it wasn't postpartum depression, but it was definitely like a very bluesy, weepy first 3-4 months.
Yes, girl. I understand.
Yes. Like crying just so much. And so like the hormones like coursing through my body. And
so like, would it be like small things that set you off, or like were there like legitimate reasons for your crying, but it was like more than normal, or everything in between?
I have no idea, because I feel like, I mean, people talk about it here and there, like when they have it, but I feel like it's not talked about like so much where you can compare stories, you know, like what's been going on. I know it wasn't depression because I didn't feel like hurting myself or the baby, but I was like, it was like the morning, you know, mourning my life that was like behind me, and this like new life that I was like so confused about. I was at that time too. We were like amongst the first in our like friend groups, like some of the first to have a kid. So not very many people in our like age range had kids, or like, you know, people that I could go to. So just like combination of like lack of sleep, hormones, and like this like very brand new situation in life that I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But on top of that too, like I feel like a really big one for me that is kind of like, I don't know if it's odd, but it was, I cried a lot about Stan, like my husband. I cried a lot about like, I don't know, like nothing had changed, or he wasn't distant, like nothing bad had changed between us. Obviously something changed between us that we have a kid, but I was like so sad that like it wasn't going to be the same between us, that it wasn't just us for some reason.
Okay, yes. I think I mean, I had a similar situation, not in those same words, I feel like, but it would be like things that would happen with David that would make me sadder than it should.
Yes.
And it would be like, I would be like hyperventilating, crying, like completely heartbroken because I felt like, oh my gosh, like he doesn't understand me like the way I was. Like I'm a new person now because of this baby. And will he ever understand this part of me? I mean, and it's better now, but like, and we're good now. But again, not maybe not in the same context, but when it comes to the husband, oh, that's so interesting. You're the first person that's ever shared that with me, and I'm like, don't feel alone anymore.
Because most people, I feel like, are, well, from what I've heard, anyways, you know, people are like get the F away from me, like you're like, you know, don't touch me right now, you know, stuff like that. Like just the postpartum stuff, it just like makes you feel like, oh, like it's just you and the baby, you know. And I did have like a harder time forming attachment to the babies, both the babies at first. And I was just really sad about this like loss, this like feeling like I've lost something with Stan. And like, I don't know. And then he'd be like, well, you know, he'd try to be so considerate, like sweet, and just be like, you know, is there anything I could do? Like, do you like, you know, he would like get up with me in the middle of the night and I would start crying, like, no, like there's nothing you can do.
Oh gosh. No.
But it was, I don't know, it was so confusing. And then over the course of like the, you know, the fourth trimester, it waned and then it was back to normal. And then I was just like, why? I didn't feel silly, but I was like, wow, like it was such intense emotions over him both times.
Yes.
That
both
I don't know.
times.
It was just like, both times. Even with Sophie, but then it was like I felt that way with Sophie. I felt that way about Elliott and Stan. You know, so it was always like, I guess it was just like relationships changing. Like I knew they would change. Nothing, and it wasn't like I was thinking it's going to change for the worse. I wasn't thinking that, but I was just like, it's just changing. You know?
No, I understand. With my first son, when the night that I knew I started having contractions with my daughter, my second, and I knew we were going to go to the hospital, there was a moment right before we put Eli to sleep that my husband and I both were like weeping like someone was dying, you know, because like we're like, oh my gosh, like this is, it's gonna be not the same anymore. But anyways, okay, so you were saying that you had left your job, you're gonna be at home, and you're living off Stan's residency income. And so like that, so you're kind of just explaining the circumstances that brought you to be a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
Okay. And so you're getting through these first months, and then after that, what does life look like for you?
Okay. Yes. Thank you for, I need you to like clarify my thoughts. So, okay, over the course of, I mean, long story long, like over the course of like these 7 years, you know, I would say in the beginning, you know, after like the postpartum, all that stuff, like when you kind of start to get the hang of like, okay, like I'm for real a mother now, like it's not a joke. It was very like fast cycles, I feel like, of like going from like very small, tight circle, like cycles of like what am I doing? Like I love this, but what am I doing? Like where am I going with my life? To like, you know, just like around and around, it's like swirly, you know. And I would say, you know, it was like daily, weekly. And then over the course of the 7 years, just like being home, and getting into the swing of things. And, you know, Stan, he's always been a really great support too. And I mean, me and him actually have very different takes on this also, but, which I don't know, maybe I'll get into that later. But over the course of 7 years, the swirling, like the questioning, it just got, wider. Like it didn't happen as often. Does that make sense? Like it wasn't, you know, daily, weekly. It was more like every couple of months I was like, like, do I feel good about where I'm at? Or like, how is this like working for like our family? How is this working for me? Or the kids, you know? And it wasn't as like panicky. It was just like let's just think about this for a minute, Eileen. And so I think some big things that I attribute that, like just, I don't know what you call it, like the the swirling, whatever, how it like stabilized, I guess, is
Mm-hmm.
um I think, okay, so the one big factor, it was, I would say it was when Stan started his fellowship in Chicago.
Okay.
So, okay, so Elliot was born in 2015. And then we came back to Atlanta when he was 3, so in 2018. But um, was it 2016? Yeah, 2016, Stan started his fellowship, which was in public health.
Okay.
And, he did all these like, uh, I hope he's gonna, he's gonna make fun of me because I actually don't even know what it's called. He's gonna listen to this. He's gonna be like, well, "You don't know what I did in fellowship." I like forget the words all of a sudden. But he like kind of specialized in trauma informed care and
Oh
in
yes, I
ANCEs,
remember. I
right? All
remember.
that stuff,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah, go back to the podcast, people.
Yeah,
Just go back
yes.
to like whatever podcast you on. And in that, like he had learned a bunch of things. He was like really excitedly telling me, and like we just like started being pretty excited about this together and like believing it,
Mm.
not just for his work, his work, but as like uh, I dare say like our life's work, and I feel like I could in some ways like claim that too, like it's his work, but it's like transcended into his life and my life and all of our
Yes.
lives.
Yes.
And it was a very pivotal, like um like earth shaking time in for both of us, I think.
Mm.
And then especially in my relation in our relationship, like me and him, and then us with Elliot, and then now with Sophie. um but it was so pivotal because I think we just, I mean, like I don't know how like when you and David became parents, like how like if you guys had ideas or like notions about like how you guys would be parents. I mean, did you have any ideas?
Um, okay, so like I think so. I was a little different than you. I mean, as much as I wanted a career, I actually always desired to be a stay-at-home mom. And I
Hmm.
think it's because I saw my parents always working, right? And
Hmm.
I like feel like I missed out on things. I grew up in a affluent white neighborhood, and so like with a lot of stay-at-home moms from my friends' moms, and I felt like there was something missing in that way. I mean, obviously my mom and my dad loved me very much and always provided for me, and I never felt not loved. I feel like I should say that, but um I think like I just wanted this like a nurturing, like in a way that I just saw my friends and their moms relationships. And
Hmm.
so to answer your question, I think there was a definite like expectation that I had for myself to be a stay-at-home mom. Is that
Hmm.
what you're asking me as parents?
Yeah, kind of. Or just like parent. Yeah, like how. I mean, it encompasses all that. But
Uh-huh.
so I guess my point in asking you that is that, let I guess like I said earlier with me not having ever even thinking about like motherhood in general. I don't
Okay.
think I wasn't even someone who was like, I really want kids. It was just kind of like I didn't not want them, but I didn't want them. I just had
Right.
like no ideas about
Uh-huh,
like
uh-huh,
I
uh-huh.
don't know anything about this. So I do feel like, Stan and I, we talk a lot about how we feel like we are, at least like in our generation, like we're parenting for the first time, like this is
Yes.
like we had no models, like to look at. There's like things here and there. And of course, like I think my parents did the best they could. I feel like that's something that we commonly say just as Asian Americans, like our parents did the best they could. But as far as like connecting with your child and like nurturing your child and
Sure.
like
Yeah.
being emotionally like available, like that was, that's very foreign.
Mhm.
And so I think because like my ideas about like parenting, I had there were certain things that I thought would be right or like that I would do. For instance, I will say that there was a time in my life. before kids that I thought if a child needed to be spanked, like, then yeah, sure, let's spank,
Mm.
and I don't, that's neither here or there nor there for me, but it's just that I had these ideas about, like,
Okay.
what we should do. So after he had gotten into this fellowship and like started learning about all this stuff, I think it just like slowly, like quickly and slowly at the same, I don't know, at the same time, it just kind of like shattered like a bunch of our like perspectives
Sure. Yeah, no, I totally understand
about
what you're saying.
parenting. Yeah.
Yes.
And a big thing too was that I did feel more like I very much believe that even from like my work at the nonprofit, very much believe that like a consistent caretaker is just really key at these early
Formative
stages.
years. Yes.
Yeah, these very formative years. But however that looks, just someone who's can be consistent, and situationally, circumstantially, like Stan, his schedule just like wouldn't allow that, so then like I just started, like I knew that that was just like the role that I needed to, but also wanted to take on
Mm.
for my kids.
Okay, so when Stan was on
Uh,
my podcast, one of the things that we talked about was ACEs,
mhm.
and I'm assuming that's kind of when that's was that during the fellowship? I don't know the timeline.
Yeah, yeah, it was during
Okay.
fellowship.
And so he explained to me what ACEs was and it blew my mind. And so
Hmm.
like that's what I felt like we needed to talk about it for people that don't know
Hmm.
what it is because me knowing what it is, I can understand what you mean when you say it changed the way we began to parent.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because um I hope that I don't botch it, but the basic thing that he was saying was the trauma that you experience as a child or even growing up has adverse effects as an adult and it can
Hmm.
manifest like physically, like through
Hmm.
disease or anything, like the way things are like developmental things. Like he talked about the frontal lobe a lot when he
Yeah.
was on, and I
Yeah.
was like. I was like like blown, right? Because even
Uh,
though it could seem obvious, right? Like it could seem obvious, like, yeah, sure, childhood trauma could affect you later in life. But I think
hmm.
the way that he was articulating, like, no, it doesn't just affect you like emotionally or mentally, but like it can physically affect you.
Hmm.
That leads to um like yeah, adverse effects as an adult, right? So
Hmm.
he
Hmm.
mentioned even like because of the trauma experienced by a person, if their frontal lobe is not developed the way that it should be because of that trauma, their reactionary time to things could be different, right? And so he even
Hmm.
gave the
Hmm.
example, right, of like um, a black man growing up in the streets of Chicago because of the trauma he experienced, maybe through where he lived, his family, gang violence, right?
Hmm.
Um, he had his frontal lobe did not fully develop the way that it should, and
Hmm.
because of that, like if a police officer come approaches him in a way that is hostile, his
Hmm.
reactionary time is much quicker to
Hmm.
react, right, to that
Hmm.
situation in a hostile way because of his physical development, not because of his like mental or emotional state. And am I wrong? Is this wrong?
No, that I feel like that's a no. That was a really good summary. That was like better
Okay.
than I could do. That was
Okay.
great.
So
That
like,
was really,
but and again, the only reason I can articulate it the way that because I was like, what did you just
yeah,
say? You know, like,
yeah.
and even me, like, we even went into the like talked about like as a Christian, like
Uh-huh.
grace. Like, what does grace look like for people that we meet, right? Like, we don't know what they go through. And so, all of this to say, I think what you said about it kind of shattering what you thought or what you expected your parenting to look like,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
changed as you continued to learn um those like I guess facts, but also like even parent your like personally like meet your son, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um and I can completely relate. I think my son Eli, he, as a firstborn, I think I'm really into birth order, Eileen. I don't know.
No,
But
I
like
mean,
as a
there's something to it. Yeah.
yeah, as a firstborn, and also like he is a lot like me. He is a planner,
Hmm.
very like he's not flexible. I have
Hmm.
to like plan his flexibility, right? And I
Hmm.
think like if which I mean like man, I just hopefully by God's grace he will, like it'll be okay. But I mean, I make mistakes. I make mistakes a lot because I get frustrated too, but yeah, I agree. If you because the generation before us, maybe they weren't as good as like nurturing or like
Hmm.
understanding the feelings of us or the
Hmm.
child. Um, yeah, like there's a lot of like scars and wounds and resentment, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
But I'm so grateful like that I don't know. For some reason I see the tendencies in Eli, and if I don't handled it with care, like I can see it going the wrong way. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Hmm.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. Um I could easily get frustrated like
Uh-huh.
why are you freaking out because the plan changed,
Right.
Instead of
Yes.
understanding, oh, he is a planner and
Yes.
he's not and he's 5 years old. Like,
Yes, yes, yes,
yes.
exactly. I think so. Okay, so okay, that kind of cleared up some stuff for me. Like, I think the things that I thought, if I had a parent was, it was kind of like that. It was just like, if they weren't, if the kids weren't following in line with like what I had planned or like what I needed to do in my life, that I would just like course correct, like in whatever way that meant, and
Yeah.
it was in complete I mean, very naive, but it was in complete like just like overlooking them as like these growing people,
Mm.
And I feel like that's the way a lot of us were raised. It was just like you do what your parents told you to do, or else you would be corporally punished or just like neglected, like emotionally
Yeah.
neglected, I
Yeah.
think that's probably a big one. I'm sure Stan talked about that too. I think for many of us it was like emotional neglect, and
Mm.
because that was so like par for the course, and like being able to connect with my own kids emotionally, um
Mm.
it wasn't something that came naturally. And I think, I mean, like case in point for me was like throughout being pregnant, um I don't like, I know people are supposed to like talk to their children like when they're in their um like in utero and whatever, and but I just couldn't, like I had nothing to say, like there was
Yeah. Me
nothing
neither.
soft, there was
Yeah.
nothing that was like, it was just like I was thinking, oh, they'll just like hear what I'm saying from like me talking to people anyways, so that emotional like connection just was very hard to come by. And the
Mm.
first couple months too, it was still very hard.
Mm.
And I can't tell you like at what point it changed, but I mean, it wasn't overnight. Actually, with Sophie, it did a little bit, it felt a little bit overnight.
Mm.
But there were, things that happened along the way that just like, kind of clicked. But I do think that like, if we hadn't been learning like what Stan had been learning, I feel like I don't know where we would be, honestly. I don't know like how we would think of like parenting if it's just like, I don't know, like I don't know, just like they're just like our spawn, and like,
Yeah, yeah.
you just want someone to take care of you when you're like old or something. I mean, I honestly have no idea what we would be thinking or doing. But okay, so I did think of one example that has been happening as of late, and this is with Sophie, my daughter. She's like a little firecracker,
Mhm.
very hot and cold. Like has she can either be like the sweetest, most like, you know, does everything on her own, so thankfully and like so sweetly, whatever, or she can be like insane, just like
Yes.
ballistic, just
I
like
got one of
I'm
those
like
too.
just the second one, the
Yes.
second one,
Oh
the
my
birth order.
gosh.
But she actually started like I would say it's been maybe a month, not quite 2 months, this like whole process, that I realized she actually had been triggering me a lot, because her explosive like tantrums, it would just come out of nowhere. It would just be like, her milk was on the table and I just like moved it to the counter, and
Yes.
no, without any idea that she was like, eyeing or like looking at her milk bottle.
Right,
And
right.
she would just go berserk, like, I want to do it. I want to do. I'm like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? But I think her explosiveness and like me, just kind of like walking on eggshells with that, like it really triggered me because it reminded me of how I was, with my own mom when I was growing up.
Mm,
And but revert, like roles reversed. Like,
mm,
my mom was very, she had a lot of anger inside of her, just like, harbored pain from like her in-laws, her situation, just like, immigrating here, all the strife that she's just had like a lot of built up anger. And like every so often, me and my sisters would say like, oh, like mama hasn't exploded in a while, like I feel like it might be coming, like I would always feel
mm,
like that, like every couple of weeks, just not knowing like when it would happen, but knowing that
mm,
it would happen. So very, um predictably unpredictable. And
mm,
that's how I felt about Sophie. Like she was just very predictably unpredictable, in her explosiveness. And but obviously I know she's not my mother. And
mm,
so, instead of, what happened with my own mom was that I would just like suppress,
mm,
whatever emotion that I felt, so that I could take care of her and her emotions, but not even like take care, like as in like, mom, are you okay? It would just be like I would become like a shadow,
I see.
so nothing would bother her, like nothing else could bother her.
Mm,
So I would become like very secondary, invisible, whatever, try to like make myself invisible. Um, and with Sophie, because I know she's not my mom, I would just like explode back at her, and
mm,
and you know, so with her, okay, in like hindsight, I know, or like mentally, I know all of this is very like classic toddler. She's 2.5 years old, trying to find her own autonomy, and she is more so, um like wanting autonomy and independence, like more than I feel like my son did at,
mhm,
her age. um so I wasn't, you know comparatively, like I wasn't as used to that being like her being the way that she was, because I
yeah.
hadn't experienced it before. um but I still know that it was like very classic toddler stuff, and that nothing was like wrong, but I, just like I couldn't, like, the every time it happened, I would feel like a lump in my throat, and I would feel like crying, and I would think like, this is so weird, like she's two, and like why do I feel like sobbing, like bawling my eyes out
Mm,
right now? And then, through like a serious conversations, Stan and I, we had talked about it before too, like all along the way. But there was one conversation one night that really hit home, and it was just, we talked more deeply about how it was a trigger for me, because I did feel like I needed to be like I was trying to like suppress all these emotions, but then at the same time, like, knowing that like I am her mother, I just like exploded, and then, just like not, I guess, knowing what to do with that, but even just talking about it with him,
yeah,
made it a little bit more clear.
yeah.
And then, I read all these podcasts, I like talk to different moms, like, all these parenting advice things, they always say, like, for instance, when, Sophie would get really upset, she would say like, mommy go, like I don't want mommy, and she would, just like want me to get out of there. So in my explosiveness, I'd be like, fine, and I would like just leave, like slam the door, and all these
Yes.
like parenting things are like, don't leave, like stay
Right.
with them, like you need to stay with them, they don't mean it. And obviously I know she doesn't mean it, but so like talking through it with Stan, and like, re-listening to like a bunch of the podcasting, things that I've been listening to, or like the advice I've gotten from other moms. I think part of it was, knowing what was triggering me, and then knowing that like in that, during those explosive moments, I heard this phrase like, you just survive the moment. And for me, surviving the moment meant, um, it meant a number of things, but it mostly meant I had to like find a way to just like zen out and like almost like just like repeat the mantra like, she's not my mom, I'm not my mom. This is not the same relationship. She's a toddler. I need to just like stay here with her. I would say like, the first time that I really tried it, it was almost like this kind of like clockwork thing. I wouldn't say it wasn't like an algorithm that that has like stuck, like through and through. But it was like the first day I tried it, just like zenning out, and like I would sit with her and I would say, "I know you want me to go. This is really frustrating for mommy, but I'm just gonna sit here until you're ready, and I want to give you a hug after." Or in Chinese, I'll say like, I'll bao you, like I'll hold you. And she cried like hard, ballistic, like she's thrown up like a few times from like crying so hard.
My goodness, firecracker, this one.
Yeah.
Oh
but the first day it was like 3 separate like 15-minute tantrums, and she would end with just like very like sobbing in my arms saying like, mommy baba, mommy baba. Yeah. And she would just want me to hold her. And then the second day it was like 2 10-minute tantrums, and then the same thing happened at the end of it. And then the third day it was like 1 minute tantrum. And I'm not saying that like after the fourth day it was like 0 tantrums ever, but it's definitely, those 3 days were like the hardest. And then after that, it's just been like a very much more like, I don't know. I mean, it's just been a lot easier for me to handle, I guess, in a sense. So in turn, it's been like she's been able to handle it. Because another thing I heard was just like they are having such big feelings that they need to know that like those feelings are safe, and that they can have these big feelings, but that you can handle them. And I was not handling them because I was so triggered by my own shit that I could not handle like whatever, she was like bringing up.
Yeah.
And so then knowing like my own like stuff that was like going on in me, I think I was able to like in some ways like tell her like, hey, I can handle whatever big feelings that you have. Also, like I am your mother.
I'm being so like convicted right now. No, I'm like, oh my God.
I never ever would have thought that way. So long, again, long story long, like I never would have thought that way if I had not also been exposed to the things that Stan had learned,
Wow.
Like I never would have thought like maybe I'm being triggered by my own mom right now in that relationship, and how is it affecting like me and Sophie right now, because being able to handle her emotions, was like, being like, my mom can't, still to this day I feel like she has a really hard time handling our emotions. Sure, it's like one of those things where if I'm stressed, I'm not going to tell her, because then she'll be even more stressed, and then I'll have to take care of her while I myself am stressed, so being like emotionally connected, like and in tune that way, having that like, secure attachment where I know like, my mom is my mom, or that I am Sophie's mom, it just like I didn't know that, like I didn't have an example of that.
Yeah. For sure. Oh my goodness. So I don't know where to go from here, but
I don't know either. I feel like that was like a bit of a tangent.
I mean, a lot of things came to mind as you were talking, and one of the things, like I said, I was like, man, I'm being so convicted right now. Like, I totally do all the wrong things. Like everything you just said, I do the opposite thing.
No, I mean that's the inclination. I feel like when like just from our upbringing.
Yeah, and then like, I think a lot of the things that I am triggered by, right? Like, so I've had these revelations too. Like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like I'm acting like my mom would have toward me in a certain situation, right? And so I try to like correct it, or I try to like So say I make the same mistake that maybe I feel like my parents did, and then afterwards, thankfully my kids, like, they're really good at communicating, and I'm really grateful for that. And so we'll have like a conversation, like, Oma messed up. I'm so
Mhm.
sorry. Like, I shouldn't have reacted this way. And
Mhm.
like we hug it out and stuff. Everything is fine. But the problem is, like, you know, it'll happen again. And I'm like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, like, I am horrible. Like, God, please make up for this somehow.
But even the act of like apologizing, like that was non-existent, you know,
Yes,
like that
yes.
alone is like, I feel like it's a huge thing. I'm a very firm believer in like be open and honest with your mistakes and like, you know, I like not, you know, moving forward in perfection because like you already know that it's not going to be perfect and it will
Mm-hmm.
just like cause unwanted like stress and anxiety or whatever. But knowing that like there's going to be times where you mess up, but then you're like open and honest about like, hey, I messed up and I'm so
Yeah,
sorry. I feel like that leaves like the greater impact than
yeah.
actually like doing everything perfectly
Mm-hmm.
so that they
Mm-hmm.
don't have to hear us say sorry.
Mm. Yeah, that's true. Yes. So like, I'm in agreement with that because I have to be okay with
Mhm.
with that, you know? Like, um but as a stay-at-home mom,
Mhm.
I know that every day looks different for you. If Were you going to tell more of your story? Cuz I have like a few
Um,
questions.
no, go ahead. I don't, yeah, I don't know where I was with that story. Again, it's like all over the place.
Okay. I did want to talk about a few things. The first thing
Okay.
was like, so the transition from 1 to 2 kids. I know that
Mhm.
Elliot was a little bit. Is he are they 5 years apart or 4 years?
They're 4 years apart.
4 years
Mhm.
apart. So like, what was that like for you as a stay-at-home mom? Like the transition between 1 to 2.
Um, well, because Elliot was so much older, I feel like he is like, I mean, if you're talking about birth order and stuff, like he's, you know, he's very mature for his age. He loves reading. He's very kind and like mature. I think I already say that. But when he was 4, I feel like he was like able to do a lot on his own,
Mm.
and also very like understanding, like empathetic.
Mm.
Um, and so, you know, I don't remember him going through. If he did, it was pretty minor, and I'm sure he did. He went through like the whole like, oh, mom's got a new like baby, kind of, you know, like
Mm.
I'm not the
Mhm.
only kid anymore. Um, he went through that in like very minor ways, I think. But he was also always very understanding. So I feel like I didn't have to worry about him as much, like when Sophie was born. But I do feel like innately just like kind of like the mom guilt about it. Like I feel like I didn't take it for granted, but I definitely took advantage of it. You know,
Mm.
like I was
Mhm.
just like, oh, like he'll be okay. Um, you know, he does a lot of activities on his own. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't reading at that point, but I feel like he was on the verge of reading. So he would always be like in his room reading or like looking at books or like playing Legos or like just like entertaining himself. And then if I wasn't like totally zombied out, I would hang out with him too. But it was definitely was like, you know, I'm sure you know too. It was definitely like one-on-one parenting. It was like Stan would be with Elliot and then I would be with
Yes,
Sophie.
yes.
Yeah. And then you know Sophie was she was 7 months, about 7 months old, I think, when the pandemic started. So it was very much just like, and then Stan got like even more busy when the, you know, during the pandemic. So it was definitely like me and Sophie a lot. And then,
Mm.
uh, or I mean, me, Sophie, and Elliot. But when Stan was home, it was Sophie just, you know, she really took to me. And that was kind of new for me too, because even, you know, being at home with Elliot, when it was just me and him, excuse me, um, he always was very much like a daddy's boy too, you know.
Mm.
It was very much like equal opportunity. And to the point where sometimes I was like, like, is this weird? Like, is this a weird thing that I'm not like, he's not just like mommy. Um, but I felt like it was a healthy thing, you know. It wasn't like at the end of the night, like he would always want me to like snuggle with him or something,
Yeah,
but he would
yeah.
he would be very much like okay with like just being with Stan,
Oh, that's so
all the time.
great.
Yeah, it was great. And like, I felt like I, had even, yeah, I could just be like, okay, I'm, go do this or that, and they would be fine. But with Sophie, she was just like, it took a long time for even her to be okay with like Stan putting her down for bed.
Yes.
So it'd always be me putting her down for bed.
Oh man, it's
Um,
like everything you're saying, I can completely relate because that's how it was for
yeah,
a long time in my house too. Like I couldn't go anywhere for like
yeah.
2 years because
It was a pandemic baby, Zoe.
well, Zoe, no, it's just when she turned 1 is when the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic started. And so we
Mm,
were at home. Like for that, I feel like, that when you get to like into your second year, I feel like it's when they like the social interactions, all those things, like they start like warming up. And then I think because we were
mm-hmm.
home the whole time, um it was hard for her to like, even now it's still actually kind of difficult for her to open up, but what I
Mm-hmm.
meant was because it was that one-on-one parenting,
Mm-hmm.
after Zoe was born, Zoe was really attached to me too, like
Mm-hmm.
Sophie. And yeah, she wouldn't let David put her down for
Mm-hmm.
any like for sleeping at night, or like he didn't even want me to leave the house. And so
Mm-hmm.
but now it's a lot better. But yeah, I can relate to that definitely. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it was different in the sense that, like, I think, I mean, there was a lot of things that I just wasn't, after, even after having one kid, I know all kids are different and stuff, but it was just like, oh, like things are very different. Like, these like patterns, of parenting, like I can't use them, or like
Yes,
what I've known
yes.
before, I can't use them. So it's like relearning the second kid all on her own, which is, it's right. It's like, well, you should learn your kids like individually, which is, I mean, another reason why, like, I feel like I've still been at home, like learning Sophie.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so the transition from 1 to 2, it wasn't bad, but I still went through the same postpartum blues,
Mm-hmm.
the same feelings of like losing something with Stan, losing something with Elliot. And then, after the fourth trimester, it kind of just like bounced back to like a regulated, feeling.
Yeah.
And I feel like the biggest thing was that she was just, yeah, she definitely was all about me. And that was like a new feeling for me too, like
Yeah,
her being
yeah.
all about me.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and then I mean, pandemic, that was like a thing. That was like a thing too. So
Yeah.
um, that added like a different challenge and dynamic to like all of our relationships. So
Sure, yeah.
um, yeah, but all in all, I would say, and I feel like largely because um, maybe because of the age gap between Ellie and Sophie, but it was okay. Yeah.
Um so like do you, okay, this is kind of, I don't know. I don't know if we should talk about this, Eileen, honestly, cuz I feel
Let's
like
do it.
no, cuz okay, I think it's like a, what do you call those? Just
A topic, hot button.
what what'd you say?
What? A hot button issue?
A
Like,
hot button issue. That's the
uh-huh.
right word. Um, I don't even know how to ask it because it's like,
Oh, just
okay,
do it. Yeah.
okay. I okay. I feel that I know I see the benefits of being a stay at home mom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that it's a luxury for me that I can be a
Mm-hmm.
stay-at-home mom, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
think that the fact that my husband, and we are able to live a life where I don't need to work full time. I
Mm-hmm.
work part time for my our church, but I can do a lot of that work after the kids go to sleep and things like that. So it's not a big deal. But again, I feel like it's a luxury that I get to be a stay-at-home mom. Um, I guess what I'm asking you is, do you see the advantages in your children of being a stay-at-home mom?
Oh, okay. Ooh.
Yikes. I don't even know. I
Okay.
don't like I feel super uncomfortable right now and
I know
very
what you mean. I know what
nervous.
you mean. I know what you mean. Okay. Okay. No, you shouldn't be uncomfortable with that. I okay, honestly, I don't know how I would be able to answer that. I don't think okay, I definitely think it is a privilege and a choice to stay at
Yes.
home.
Yes.
Like without a doubt, absolute privilege and choice. Um I mean, maybe not always a choice, but it's a privilege for us. I do not think that everyone needs to stay at home because first it's not possible, but
Right.
also like I do believe that there are great caretakers like that are
Yes.
it doesn't have to be like, exactly like mom and dad, but there are other great caretakers that can do their jobs well.
Mhm.
Um, do I in our situation specifically, because Stan has very little flexibility
Mhm.
and okay, first of all, to answer that question like broadly, um, I don't think we can answer broadly because I think you just look at situationally, like
Yes.
everyone's household
Yes.
for themselves,
Yes.
right? And I think you just kind of configure like what works within your family dynamic, which is what we always say. Like people always say, like, oh, it's just like what works best for you, like
Yes.
in your family dynamic.
Agreed. Yeah.
In our family dynamic, Stan has very little flexibility. And we're very big believers in having like one consistent person, and because I am capable and able and have the privilege to be that one person, like I'm going to be that one person.
Mhm.
Um, and like Elliot has said, even like as of late, he has said before, like, when I talk about like, oh, so he's going to start preschool, next year, he asked like, what am I he'll ask like in short like what am I planning on doing basically with
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, what do you mean what am I going to do with my time?
Yeah.
Like how dare you ask me
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
No, he because he also knows that I have been writing more and like dabbling into like the things that I have done in the past. He was asking like, are you gonna start like go to work again or something? I was like, oh, I
Mm.
don't know, like I have no idea. And he was like, I don't want you to go to work. And I was like, oh, that was like the first time I heard him say that. And I was like, why? And he just got almost like kind of sobbed, like weepy. It was just like, I like keeping home. And at first I was like, should I be offended by this? Like, am I like holding back like womankind, like all of womankind right now
Mm.
with like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
way that
yeah.
he's
I get what you're
thinking.
saying.
But pulling it out of him and like from his like 7-year-old brain, he basically was just telling me that he was very comforted by the fact that I was home. And
Mm.
that actually it makes me feel so good, like to know that
Mm.
he feels very comforted by me being
Mm.
home. And that he feels, safe and just like he like when he thinks of home, he thinks of me.
Yeah.
Um, so in that sense, like, your question was,
I don't really know what my question was, honestly.
okay.
I mean, well, by the end of the day, I think what I gathered from your answer to my really awkwardly questioned thing was, um, I think having you kind of saying you feel that it is important to have at least a consistent caregiver
Uh-huh.
for a child that can be like around for them and show up for them consistently,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
um, considering the family dynamic and what's possible for each family is important. I think that answers my
Mm-hmm.
question, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think sometimes I question if I'm doing the right thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there are days where I'm really tired, a lot of days
Mm-hmm.
where I'm really tired. And I hear from a lot of stay-at-home moms that like, oh, like just hang in there a little bit longer. You're just in the thick of things, like things are gonna get better. It's gonna be different. Um, Not that want necessarily want it to get better, but I think I am there are days where I feel myself trying harder to enjoy the moments than other days, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like whether it's I got less sleep that night or the kids are fighting constantly and I'm like ah, those
Mhm.
kind of things. And so I'm like, I've heard things like people have said to me like, "Oh, I'm actually a better mom because I work."
Mhm.
Right? And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Oh, like what do you mean by that? Like do you feel like you would be more like does that mean they're more patient with their kids, after a full
Mhm.
day of work and then they can be present for them? Like is that something that would work for me, even though I'm trying my best and I do many days, Eileen, honestly, many days I do see the fruit of my invested time into our children,
Mhm.
and those days I feel super weepy and super grateful,
Mhm.
but I guess that's why I brought it up because
Yeah.
I think, it is situational. And like you said, it is a privilege to be able to do what we do in our current season. But at the same time, like when I hear working moms say that, I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, like what does
Okay,
that
let's go
mean? What does
there.
that
Let's go there,
mean?
Blair. Let's go there,
Like
Blair. Let's do this. Let's do this. I'm just kidding.
like what does that even mean? So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like um but then it goes for me personally, it goes back to like, no, this is what I wanted. Like
Mhm.
I love this. I really
Yeah.
do. I love that I can be home with my kids. I'm even like not send I'm like I talked with my husband today this evening actually, and like um Zoe is 3, she'll be 4 in November. I
Mhm.
have an option if I want to do maybe 2 or 3 days, like a morning, mommy's
Mhm.
morning or something. But I'm like, like I kind of want her home. Like I kind of want to be with
Mhm.
her more and until I have to send her off. And so I am really grateful for like this time. But yes, like I'm
Yeah.
tired and I am curious, like I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
like should I work? Like maybe I should work. Like but
Okay. Yeah, this is where it gets like I totally know what you mean, and it gets like tricky and like talking about this because I don't want to come off sounding like judgmental or like
yes,
or
yes.
self-righteous or anything like that, because because truly like truly and honestly, like I don't I think I really do think it's just it is whatever's best for you and your family. But
Mhm.
in that though, I believe that everyone needs to be like honest. Like just be like honest with yourself and with in doing so like it produces honesty like with people around you. So like statements like I will give you a list of statements that I absolutely detest, like
Okay.
absolutely detest. It is stay at home mom is the hardest job in the world.
Mm.
I feel like I'm a better mom when if I'm working. I could never do what you do. I feel like some people are just better at it than others. In any variation of those things. And I with my whole body despise like when I hear those things, I just like want to be like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean by this? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Because like, saying that first of all, it is a little hard for me to believe um that when someone says like I just feel like I'm a better mom when I'm working,
Mhm. Mhm.
I get what that means. I
Mhm.
do. Like I think everyone does need like, mental stimulation in whatever however they feel like they need it, whatever variety that you need it in, or like doses, I think, I think it's very important to like to work towards something, to not be idle, to blah blah, blah all those things.
Yes.
Um, but I don't think that it is this like either or statement that like I need to be working, you know, or I'm not, or I'm not going to be a good mom.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think when I say like I feel like people just need to be honest, just like be honest and vulnerable and like don't come up like say that to someone with like your walls up already,
Mm.
because you're like I don't know, because what's on the other end of that statement? Like, what do you think? Like, if I'm saying that to you, like, I just feel like I'm a better mom when I'm working. Like, what do I think that you're going to say back to me?
Mm.
Like, what am I afraid of?
I see.
Not
It's
that,
almost like justifying being a working mom.
yes. So I had, yeah. So I had a friend who said this recently to me. that if she could have any response, if she could like freely say whatever she felt like she could say, like in that moment without like worrying or whatever, it would be something along the lines of, like I'm like proud of my choice for, because she's also a stay-at-home mom. I'm proud of my choice and I'm grateful for it. And I'm grateful like to be where I'm at, like in this like time in my life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But she and I, we talked about how we don't say those things because inherently it kind of like makes people feel bad, like it makes someone else feel bad. Like I don't know, I don't would if I was a working mom and I heard that, I'd be like, oh shit, like did I
Right,
am I proud
right.
of my choice right now? I don't know, like maybe that's putting a lot of maybe I'm presuming. I don't know. I don't know if I'm presuming too much, but I just feel like I very much appreciate like people being honest with themselves,
Mm.
um, because I think that's when like vulnerable conversations happen, and I very much appreciate vulnerability. You know,
Right, right.
never presenting yourself as if like you have it all together or like you know what you're doing, and then you know in these like very subconscious ways saying things that to someone else that it actually, I mean, just it's like a really sucky thing to say, you know.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
um and I think being a stay-at-home mom, I think over the the course of these 7 years, I definitely have had to be very honest with myself. You know, I could only be very honest with myself during this time, um, because I feel like that's what kids do to you. And when you're around a kid, you're kids for like most of your like waking hours. Like you just learn to be like very honest with
Yeah,
yourself
yeah.
and you're in how you feel and like what's going on. You know, because you want your kids to be that way. Um, but yeah, I mean, the list goes on with like things that are very like, you know, things that I don't like to hear. Um, and like, well, I mean, I can talk about like to like the being a stay-at-home mom is like the hardest job in the world. How many times have you heard that? Like, how many times like has that come up in conversation? Just like rolling off someone's tongue. But I'm like, are you thinking about what you're saying? Because this world, this society does not treat being a mom like the hardest job in the world. In fact, like I feel like I firmly believe that this society, this world, hates women and hates mothers, and
Mm.
it's not so it's not so like, I mean, it's obvious in a lot of ways, but there's like all these subtle things that happen. You know, you can talk about the lack of maternity leave, paternity leave, like when the significant other is like when you need the significant other to help, they're like penalized at work. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
especially namely if it's like a husband or
Yes, yes.
you know, like trying to help the stay-at-home mom out. No, can't happen. You know, um, like breastfeeding, you know, people have all these feelings about breastfeeding. There's
Right.
like all this shame around breastfeeding. People at work feed and like there's like no rooms designated for breastfeeding. You know,
Mm.
all these things say to me that mothers are not very important. You know, that
Mm.
working is important. Making, you know, money, making the world go round is like important.
Mm.
But
Mm.
mothers don't make the world go round. I feel
Mm.
like it's all lip service. Like when people say a stay-at-home mom is like the hardest job in the world, nothing backs that up. So I'm like, so why are you saying it? Like, do you really believe that? Um, and so all that to say, it ends up feeling very patronizing because I think on some level, maybe people do believe it, but then when the actions don't match the words, it just makes you feel some type of way. It makes it
Mm.
feel like it's this superlative that I never asked for.
Mm.
But it's only given, and I feel like it's just very patronizing because
Mm.
nothing matches up with that, you know. Um, and yeah, so
Yeah. Yes. I've actually, because we brought this up the first time we met at the softball
hmm
game, and
hmm
honestly, I have never thought about that, and that's kind of like just my personality though. I'm just very like take it for what it is. And I have
Mhm.
never thought deeper, and but I mean, I think what you're saying speaks volumes, right? I feel like yes, you're absolutely right. Like the world does not like acknowledge moms the way that they talk about that they should, right? But I also feel like um I guess for me, when people would say that to me, I would be like, yes, like it is a
Mhm.
hard job. Like, thank you for saying it. But then now that you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, like, do they really know?
Yeah, it is. It is a hard job. Like we are like, and I would dare say like, I think a large part of society also doesn't take kids seriously, and I'm not like,
Yes.
I never took kids seriously.
Yes.
I feel like I have a hard time taking kids seriously, even
Yeah.
though I, am a mother. But so when people say like kids are the future and stuff like that, I'm like, well, like that doesn't show either, like
Mm,
there's no, all these options are so sucky. Like there's such
mm,
sucky options in the world for to
mm.
like be able to take care of your child well, and for your
Yes.
child to do well in a system,
Man, you're like firing me up right now. Like, yes. Yes, girl.
So I'm like, so put your money where your mouth is, or like put your heart where your mouth is, or something,
Mm,
because it doesn't make sense,
mm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm going to transition to a different question because I
Okay.
feel like this is something that is relevant for me. I don't know if it's relevant for you or not, but in transitioning to being a stay-at-home mom from your previous job, and like, so for me, mine was very abrupt, my transition. I got really sick with my first and my second,
Mm,
but I was like bedridden. Like I lost like 15 pounds my first trimester. I couldn't
mm,
drink water. So I literally just abandoned my job. Like I sent
mm,
a mass email and said, sorry, I can't come in. I can't work. And so
mhm,
after that, I never looked back. I was a figure skating coach, and
mm,
so
mm,
yeah, I just yeah, again, never looked back. And I think for a long time, whether it's like work or job or like even like my for me personally, my church involvement, right? Like all
mhm,
these things like disappeared like
mhm,
overnight. And um my kind of postpartum like bluesy stage was a lot of like what you were talking about, those like the swirls,
mhm,
like what am I doing, who like what is my identity, like
mhm,
where do I belong, like even like it got to the point for me that I was like, are my friends really my friends, like
mhm,
things like this, right? And because me too, I was kind of on the earlier side of being a parent as well. So amongst like my friend groups, and um yeah, I felt so like far removed. And um things are better, obviously, 5 years in, but I think there are still parts of me that, like, even though I know for me personally, I think what God has called me to is like being faithful in what he's given me and doing
mhm.
it well. So that includes being a mom. But even in that, I'm like, sometimes I'm like, is that enough? Like, is that enough? Do you struggle with these kind of things at all?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Of course I do. Of course I do. I think, um, yeah, like I have like this. Okay, so I do feel like the reason why um I'm nervous to talk about this, because I have to sift out and like parse through like how much of this is my own insecurity,
Mm,
and how much of this do I actually like think is like really happening,
sure.
and I think part of my insecurity is just like, I don't want to have the stereotype of like this like gold digger, Asian woman, just like wanting to stay home, like no, um, like thoughts in my brain, or like,
Mm,
um, that I just had nothing else better to do.
mm,
And so that's my insecurity going into this. And earlier I had said that like Stan actually has his own like feelings about all this, whatever, and it's a little bit different. And we I feel like it wasn't even like it came up even like later on, like after Elliot was born, but he actually feels like he feels insecure about other people thinking that he's making me stay home. I was like, oh, I was
What?
like, I didn't know that. I didn't know
So
that. Like he,
interesting.
yeah, like as an Asian man, he's like, stay home, So okay, so for the record, that is not true.
Not true. Not true,
Not true.
everybody. It's
For
not
the
true.
record,
He
that's
does
not
not
true.
feel that way.
No. But yeah, so my insecurity is that, just that people will think I'm all intents and purposes like just dumb, like dumb and like wanting to stay home because I had no other passion or like purpose in life.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I grappled with like that part of my identity and like always even like I'm on social media like Instagram, but very sparingly because even like all this speaks to me about like me wanting to create like a name for myself, like being a
Mm,
stay-at-home mom, you're definitely just like, you know, like at home, like
yes.
isolated by yourself.
Yes.
And yeah, I think a big thing, I don't know, even it's just I'm sure people can identify with it, but like personally, like one of four girls in my like I have three sisters,
Uh-huh.
so I'm one of four daughters, um, and just like I don't know, in some ways, yeah, just always feeling like I didn't feel like I had to prove myself to my sisters, but like prove myself to my parents for sure.
Mhm.
My
Mhm.
mom, I don't think she'll ever. I'm not gonna ever let her listen to this
Yeah.
because this would make her really sad. She forgot that she didn't believe that I graduated college. She because I graduated a semester early and I didn't want to go to graduation. And she was like, after a while, she was like, did you really graduate? And I was like, yeah, I did, but I just didn't want to go to graduation. Um, so she didn't believe I graduated college. I got my master's in communication, and she had forgotten that I got my master's. So she thought I did not get my master's. She thought I was like a college dropout.
Oh my gosh.
Just like trying to marry a doctor, like after all these years, because she had always been like marry a doctor or someone like wealthy so that you can stay at home. The whole time I was like, no, mom, no, like absolutely not. And she's probably like, oh, she actually did what I said
That is
she
so
should
fascinating. Oh
do.
my goodness. Well, I mean,
Um,
really, truly, this situation is not just your mom, it's most of us, I think, growing up.
right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. So I don't know, all that like left like a huge ass chip on my shoulder. Just like feeling like I needed to prove my name, like I could make it on my own. Oh, yeah, it was very much like this feeling of, like I didn't believe that she believed I could make it on my own.
Mm.
And then she was only like okay with like letting her vice grip go, after I had gotten married. Um, and so, yeah, I just like knowing that, like wanting to prove myself, like, that I could make it on my own. And Stan and I, we even went through like a hard time in the beginning, not anything like crazy, but he knew all this about like my upbringing. And I think there was a point in time too, it was so like I was so torn up about it that I had actually married a doctor, that he was like, should I, he had like almost seriously been like, should I change my profession? And I was like, I can't make you do that. Like, this is, I don't know. So, anyways, like, I had to deal with all that stuff.
Really?
Yeah. We had to like
Wow.
sift through all that. Um, and I think, there, it comes in like spurts too, where out, just the frustration of like, he is so passionate about what he does.
Mm.
And I mean, it's his work, but we almost don't consider it work. It's just his life's work.
Yes, yes.
Um, and I believe that fully for him too,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I feel like, it's just like this situation's dynamic is the way that it is. Um, and so I don't know, like, but every once in a while the frustration would come up of like, um, it's like overshadowing. Like I feel like overshadowed.
Mm.
And so trying to like, firm up my identity and however I know how. And I brought up social media because I mean that's like a love-hate relationship for me, because I feel like I could very easily just like want to justify my life, like on social media,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and create this like identity, you
Yeah.
know, for myself. And so I feel like I very periodically just like have to like delete it and like
Yeah.
not even think about it or whatever, because it's so fragile. Like that identity making in that way is so fragile. Um and it just doesn't, like, I know that it's not actually like what would help, you know.
Yeah.
It's nothing that would actually um yeah, nothing that would actually like lift this, like take this chip off my shoulder, you know.
Yeah. So, okay, so my question was about like the whole identity thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying that a lot of the insecurities that you are kind of sifting out is kind of like, the thing with your mom and stuff like that. But like, mm, so do you at times feel okay, sorry. So you brought
Mm-hmm.
up social media because you feel like you have to prove yourself time to time that being a stay-at-home mom is like looks a certain way. Is that what you're saying?
um
Or like you want to do it because you're like proving something or showing something?
I think like I grapple with my identity and like wanting to prove that I'm like good enough, that I
Okay.
like
Okay,
that
okay.
I like, you
Yes.
know, I'm educated, I chose to do this, and like, and even yes, sure, like that. I don't think I'm like, I want to present being a stay-at-home mom as a certain way. I don't like, I'm not inclined to be like, look at these crafts that I've done, you know, like look at this like montage of like
Really?
all the
Cuz
things
I'm
I
like that. No, I'm
did
just
with my
kidding.
um yeah, I don't want to present it in that way, but I think it's more of like I want to not my motherhood, but just like me myself. Like I want to present myself. I struggle with like wanting to present myself in a certain
Yeah.
way. And then almost like dispelling like the like what people think of, what I think people think of as a stay-at-home mom.
Mm.
But so I say like I have to parse out like what is my insecurity or like what I actually think people think, you know, because is it just my insecurity that I think people think this way about being
Mhm.
a stay-at-home mom, you know?
Mhm.
Or is it completely, or maybe people don't think this way about it being a stay-at-home mom, you know? Because like I, you know, earlier in our conversation when we had talked at softball, I think you had said something about like how I think even generationally is changing, you know, and I've read
Yes.
things about like how there are more like millennials like choosing to stay at home
Mhm.
now, and whatever the reason, you know, like pandemic included, like there are more people choosing to stay at home now, you know, and I actually didn't know that, like I didn't know people were like choosing to stay at home because at least in like the my more immediate um circles and the like this like the society that I'm familiar with anyways, like our generation, you know, it wasn't um it's not the feeling that I got of like, you
Mm.
know, people were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna stay at home now, you know. It was more so in fact like, you know, I feel like at the time that I was like raising Elliot when he was younger, I feel like grit was like all the rage, you know, people talking about grit,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and Cheryl Sandberg and you know all that stuff, and that was very popular. And you know, grit is always associated with like hard work, like working, money, like you know, you put in a day's work, you know, it's not associated with being a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I feel like I just had to like sift through um like whatever insecurity I was like projecting
Yeah.
on. Yeah,
Yeah. Man.
yeah.
And I feel like those insecurities become so much more real when for me personally, like, because I am isolated a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
like from people or like, I'm like talking to my kids all day long and I'm just talking to
Mm-hmm.
kids. And so, like, I do feel like when I get into my own head, those same insecurities that you're talking about not, I mean, similar in that way. Um, yeah, come up for me honestly through social media. Man, social media is not good.
It sucks. It really honestly sucks, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, no, it's great for like things like, I think, discovering things like this podcast, you know. But for the most part, I don't think it was created to be
No, it's
like
definitely not created to be that. I mean, thankfully,
an
there are people that turn it
uplifting.
into a
Yeah,
resource, I guess. But
right. Yeah, on the day to day, completely agree with what you're saying. Though, like day to day, there's all these thoughts of like, yeah, like I'm just talking to my kids, and like, you know, it's not just being a stay-at-home mom, being a mom, being a parent. It is very hard. Like if you're trying to parent and parent well, it is extremely hard because you're thinking about, especially like for us, I feel like who are parenting like for the first time, like no
yes,
previous role models, whatever.
yes,
You're just like try to do all these things that you don't have any idea like what you're doing. So it is very hard. Um, like no doubt about it. Um, oh man, I had a point with that. Oh, but yeah. So on the day, like the day to day, I feel like, my like my mental like thoughts, it is like, okay, no, I forget where I was going with that. All of a sudden. What were you talking about again? I
I was
completely
talking
blanked.
about my. I talked about my insecurities with uh just in general of like being isolated and feeling like I don't know what I said either, honestly. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. This is
So many
mom
things.
momming 101. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like trying to like sift through like these like half thoughts. It's like
I
every
know.
day I'm trying to sift through half thoughts. That, yeah, maybe that's kind of like what I wanted to say too, is that, yeah, I feel like, staying at home, it definitely isn't like, it's not like the Instagram things. Everybody kind of knows that. Like we say like, oh, we know Instagram is fake, or like the things that like are curated are really fake.
Yes.
It's not like I'm on the floor, like, playing, like doing all these crafts with my kids every single moment. In fact,
Yes, we don't do that,
I hate,
everybody.
right.
Just
I
so you
hate
know.
crafting. I hate crafting, and something that I really really hate is playing make believe. Like when I have to, like,
Oh.
when my son was younger, and like you have to do all these like noises with transformers and stuff like that.
Yes.
I was like, I
Yes.
hate this. Like I hate this so much. I'm like pew
Yes.
pew. Or like with Sophie, she's a little different. She loves doing make believe stuff, but she loves doing realistic make believe stuff. Like, which I don't know. This hurts me in different ways too. Like she'll love pretend you go to the grocery store. That's like a thing that we need to do. Or like cleaning. I'm like,
Right,
yes,
right, right.
that is also a thing that
Right.
we do. But yeah, it's like all those like make believe things. Or like crafting. It's not things that I enjoy doing. Or like always feeling like I always have an unfinished thought in my mind that I just can't get to every single day, every single moment. Stan and I went on an anniversary, our 10-year anniversary trip to New Orleans. Was it in 2021 last year? And it was the first time that we had gone away, just us two, for like a long weekend. And I told him that it was the first time in like 6, 7 years that I feel like I've been able to have a complete thought from like beginning to end, and
Yes.
just like let it sit, and like I just felt so like complete, and not like anxious because of all these half thoughts in my brain that like aren't able to be completed. And
Yes.
then right when we get back, it's just like instantly we're back to like half
Yes.
thoughts
Oh my
that just
gosh.
like vanish. Like what if they don't come out, they just vanish,
Yes, articulated so well. Like I totally understand what you mean. Like even I would even say like I mean I know that Stan's schedule is like probably so crazy and um because of his work. But you know, I get to have David home on the weekends. And so
hmm
even Saturdays are like solace for me cuz
hmm
like and I because like I can having him with me, honestly, is like I can complete things that I, like you said, like complete my thoughts and also like do what I was walking to do, but then didn't get
Yes.
distracted to do
Yeah.
something else, or no one's calling
Yeah.
mommy or amma like
Yeah.
every freaking second.
Mhm.
I'm like,
Mhm.
go to
Mhm.
appa, go to dad.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, I have a
Yeah.
directive right now. I'm
Yes.
going to the bathroom by
Yes, I
myself.
understand.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So like all that, like for any parent goes without saying, like it is very hard. You have all these like incomplete thoughts, like all these like, whatever. Um, but I still very much, I don't know. I obviously, like, we can say those things, like vent to each other, but I like there's not one part of me that feels like um that this isn't like where what I should be doing right now.
Mm, yeah.
Um and I think part of like not being able to talk, feeling like kind of bad about talking openly about it is because of the whole like, I don't know, vibe that like, oh, you chose to be at home. Like this is just like
Mhm.
the cross that you have to bear.
Mhm.
Um, or like, um, or like when I hear other working people say like, um, that it's easier to just like work than to be, or I don't know how it's said. It's I feel like I'm a better mom when I'm working or something like that, because like these little things aren't like as, I don't know, jarring for you day to day or
Mhm. Mhm.
something. Um, all these things, I don't know, it's so hard to like process all these like opinions like all together, like it's so hard to like reconcile all these thoughts, because it's
Yes.
it's all of this. It's every single one of these things, it's amazing and it's hard and it's like working is great, but it's also not, And I think my biggest thing, like the biggest thing I um like my main, I don't know, point about all this is um I even thought like, the title of the podcast is like what I like when I grow up, dot dot dot.
Mhm.
Um it's not even that, like for my own kids, for myself and for my kids, it's when I grow up, like I want to be honest with myself and
Mm.
to always be willing to learn. Um because there because because being a mom, being anything, any identity that you have, I feel like it's so much that you can't like you can't box people in and say these like blanket statements of it's the hardest job in the world, or
Mm.
I can never do what you do, or
Mm.
um I don't know, whatever the list goes on. I feel like when those like blanket statements are made, there's like boxing in kind of statements are made, it comes out of insecurities that we feel like when we say it to the other person. It's
Yeah.
coming out of like your own insecurities. And I think if we could just be like honest with like where we are, like where we're coming from, like why we feel the need to say those things, and maybe possibly don't even mean it, like just be honest and like be willing to like learn, that's
Mm.
what I want for my kids is
Yeah.
just, yeah, I feel like if they can learn to be honest with themselves, they'll be able to be honest with people around them, and then continually, want to learn, not not to have these like fixed, cliche, overstated, patronizing things that they just
Mm.
like have in their pocket that they assume about other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I, it's clear for me, and I think the reason, honestly, I was a little bit nervous to have this conversation, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
honest. Speaking about honesty,
Mm-hmm.
it's because, like with my other interviews, like there's a clear goal, right? And
Mm-hmm.
purpose, right? Like there's like they are engineers, they're doctors, they're
Mm-hmm.
accountants, they're whatever, creatives, and there's a journey that gets
Mm-hmm.
to where they are today, and
Mm-hmm.
then they can offer advice and
Mm-hmm.
what to do, what not to do. And I think with this conversation I was excited to have it, but also nervous because it's like yeah, you cannot box in being a parent or
Mhm.
being a mom, like you just said. And there are so many little things, like so many little things um that can be talked about. We could talk about like what our day to day looks like. We do not do
Mhm.
crafts all day long,
Mm-mm,
like,
mm-mm.
and we most of the time it's like, or at least for me, like it's like every second is amma, mom,
Mhm.
mom, and um because like they're literally at this age, like I'm realizing more and more, it's like, I need to be okay with it because I'm literally all they know at this point,
Mhm.
as their caregiver. And again, privileged to do it. But I think, what you said is like really sound, because it's like at the end of the day, like if I'm being honest with myself and
Mhm.
investing into my children, that yeah, at the end of the day, if you can be honest
Mhm.
and try things
Mhm.
and be vulnerable, then that's just, our job is to raise human beings to be better human beings than
Mhm.
ourselves. And
Mhm. Mhm.
um it, it's a hard conversation to have, with other people. Actually lately, Eileen,
Mhm.
I've been struggling with um like different parenting styles,
Mm.
and like even just like within like friends, and it's like, how do I feel? Like, and um can our kids all like comfortably at this age like
Mm. Mhm.
play together if our parenting styles are so different? Like
Mm.
so many things as a parent, as a mom, that goes through my head. And anyways, all that to say, like I was gonna even say like, oh, do you have any advice for moms? Like, other than, I mean, what you said was great. That was great. Like, I think that was really good. But do you have any other advice? Because for me, I'm like, the list is endless. Like, I don't know what to say. Like when people ask me that. But what about you?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that was maybe that was it. That
Yeah,
was like
no,
that was the only half thought that was like
yeah.
able to form. That was that was my full thought. No.
um,
Um I think
yeah.
I think the whole like not being boxed in any situation, not like just in life, like just in living, is very important to me. And I think yeah, it's like, I mean, even going back to like, like owning up to mistakes with your kids or like with each other, with people,
Mm,
with friends, and like our day to day, it just change, like our day to day changes. Like our my thoughts are not stagnant. Like they're not like,
mm,
on any given day, it kind of changes, not dramatically. Like I'm not like, dramatic, it doesn't dramatically change, but we're living, breathing people, humans,
yeah.
and I feel like that is just like, I don't know, it's like part and parcel with like being, just knowing that like if I can be honest, with myself, like with whatever I'm thinking, um, and then someone else coming in and also being honest, like with what they're thinking, I think, um, I don't know, I just feel like that's really important in having like these grounded, trusting, like healthy relationships with
Yes.
myself, with my kids, with other people, with other moms working or not working,
Yes. Yes.
other parents working or
Yes.
not working. Um, so yeah, I think like coming into it, like into conversation with people about like this kind of stuff is very important. And um um you know don't, that list of things that I hate, don't say them anymore.
Yeah.
Just
Don't
like
say
don't,
those.
just like cross them off your little like cliche pocketbooks. And there was one other thought I had, but it escaped me. Of course, it just like flew away.
Well, I feel like that's on par for this conversation too,
Yeah.
because,
Okay.
I think, well, first of all, Eileen, I don't want to take up any more of your time. You've been so great and so helpful. Thank you for making this conversation with me so comfortable tonight. I know that you're probably tired. I know I am from just a long day of being a mom.
Mm. Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
at the same time, I feel like this conversation, I think, will be helpful to, I think people would just be curious,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like our
This is not
thoughts.
prescriptive in any way that anyone should be
Yes,
a stay-at-home mom, but the
absolutely.
most prescriptive thing is just be honest with
Yes,
yourself. Be
yes.
willing to learn from other people.
Be
Yeah.
willing to learn from other people. Be
Mm-hmm.
humble.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you have any questions for Eileen or even myself, Eileen, I'm sure you'd be open to talking to people, right?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would love to. I would love to.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think this is like a long-term forum, like that
Mm-hmm.
the conversation that needs to continue to happen, even outside this podcast. So again, thank you for your transparency today. I really appreciate it. Was there anything else you wanted to share? I feel like we talked about a lot of things, but and we could probably talk more. But
Yeah. 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 No. So yeah, I can't think of anything.
but hey guys, if you want to reach out, please feel free to reach out to me through social media. You can DM me, or you can email me at podcastwigu@gmail.com. Thanks guys, until next time, bye.